There is a bird in your yard right now that knows exactly who you are. Not in the broad, instinctive way animals sense a nearby presence. Not simply the silhouette of a person near their food source. It knows your face, specifically. It has been observing you. Only you. And every time you've stepped outdoors, it has cataloged details about you that most people would refuse to believe any bird could absorb. And depending on what conclusions it has drawn, it may already be acting on them. Welcome back to Backyard Bird Mind. If you're joining us for the first time, hit subscribe now, because what you're about to discover will permanently alter the way you see every bird that passes through your yard. Today, we're diving into something that genuinely stops people in their tracks the first time they encounter it. Birds are watching you, not at random, not passively, but with real recognition, real recall, and real purpose. We're going to walk through 8 signs that the birds around your home have been studying you, what verdict they've reached, and what that means for the quiet relationship taking shape just beyond your door. We'll close with something I think many of you will find genuinely affecting, because it reaches beyond what birds can recall and into what they may actually be trying to express. Stay with me all the way through, because sign number 6 is something researchers didn't believe was possible until fairly recently, and sign number 8 is the one that shifts everything. Sign number 1. The birds show up before you've done a single thing. You know exactly what this feels like. The feeder hasn't been touched, the back door is still closed, you haven't made a sound, and yet you glance through the window and there they are. A pair of chickadees perched on the branch closest to where you always stand. A cardinal settled at the yard's edge, facing the house. Most people chalk this up to coincidence. It isn't. Research from the University of Cambridge, reinforced by studies at Cornell's Lab of Ornithology, has demonstrated that many common backyard birds, particularly corvids like jays and crows, but smaller species like chickadees as well, develop what scientists call anticipatory behavior towards specific humans. In plain terms, they learn your routine. They track when you tend to appear, what you typically do when you emerge, and how that lines up with food, safety, or danger. In one extended field study, crows near a suburban feeding area were documented anticipating a particular caretaker's arrival up to 12 minutes before she came outside, repositioning themselves across the yard and vocalizing in patterns researchers came to recognize as distinct from their other calls. This wasn't happening with any other person who occasionally moved through the space. It was exclusive to her. What this means for you, if birds are already facing your yard when you step out, if they seem to be waiting, that's not chance. That is memory. That is recognition. You have a place inside their working model of how the world operates, and your appearance carries meaning. If you sit with that for a moment, it's actually a remarkable thing.
Sign number 2. Their reaction to you is completely different from their reaction to anyone else. Picture someone else walking into your yard. A neighbor, a delivery driver, a relative visiting for the first time. Watch the birds. Almost without exception, they pull back. They go silent. The feeder clears out, and they wait, sometimes for several minutes after that person has moved on, before drifting back. When you walk out, assuming you've been steady and calm in that space, birds often simply stay. Some keep feeding. Some shift to a branch slightly farther away, but don't take off. The response is fundamentally different, and this difference is primarily visual. A landmark study published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences put this to the test, using researchers wearing masks to see whether American crows could distinguish between a face linked to past threat and a neutral one. Not only did crows identify the threatening face reliably, even when the wearers changed their clothing, their hats, their stride, but crows who had never personally encountered the threatening researcher began avoiding that face too. They had learned it from other crows. The memory of one specific human face had moved through an entire local crow population. For the birds in your yard, your face is already in their system. The only question is which category it's been placed in. And the fact that they stay calm around you while fleeing from everyone else tells you precisely what they've decided. Sign number 3, they make eye contact with you. This one is easy to overlook, but once it registers, you'll never stop noticing it. Watch a bird at your feet or nearby when you're standing still, a chickadee, a nuthatch, a house finch, at some point it will pause, rotate its head, and look directly at you. Not a sweeping scan of the surroundings, a deliberate, focused look aimed at your face. It may hold that for 2 or 3 seconds before returning to the seed. For birds whose eyes sit on the sides of their heads, looking directly at something requires actively turning the head to bring one eye forward. That is a deliberate choice. It demands a moment of concentrated attention from an animal that can never fully stop watching for threats. When a bird chooses to give you that attention, and especially when it does so again and again, it is registering you as an individual. Ornithologists have noted that birds who are deeply familiar with a particular person often engage in what's called investigative orientation, positioning themselves to get a clean monocular view of that individual, especially when the person is behaving differently than usual. Wearing a new color, carrying something unexpected, moving in an unfamiliar way, they pick up on all of it.
There's something quietly profound about being truly seen by a creature the size of your closed fist. When a bird at your feeder meets your gaze, that's not random. It's paying attention to you. Sign number 4, they follow your movements around the yard. This one takes a little patience to catch, but once you see it, it's unmistakable. Walk a route through your yard, from the back door to the garden bed, across to the feeder, then to the far corner. If the birds around you genuinely know you, many of them will reorient as you go. A cardinal that was facing east turns to follow you. A jay shifts along its branch to keep you in view without lifting off. What you're watching is called subject tracking, and it's part of how birds monitor individuals in their environment who matter to them. Predators are always tracked, of course, but birds also track individuals they've categorized as safe, because even a safe person's behavior carries useful information. If you suddenly start moving erratically or reaching toward the feeder in an unexpected way, they want to know immediately. The striking implication, you are on a mental watch list, not a threatening one, a meaningful one. You are a known variable inside the bird's model of its world, and that model refreshes every single time you appear. In crows, this tracking behavior has been documented with extraordinary precision. Individual crows have been observed maintaining simultaneous awareness of 3 or 4 specific humans within a complex urban setting, monitoring their positions and updating predictions about what each person was likely to do next. That kind of social monitoring applied to humans requires real cognitive depth. But what comes next is something even dedicated bird enthusiasts rarely know about. Sign number 5. They've been telling other birds about you. Hold on to this one because it's going to feel significant. If even one bird in your yard has recognized you and filed you under safe or reliable food source, there is solid evidence to suggest that information has traveled to other birds, including ones who have never directly encountered you. This was first carefully documented in crows, where researchers observed what they began calling social learning of human identity. Juvenile crows, who had no prior contact with a particular person, began displaying the same avoidance behaviors as experienced adults because they had watched those adults react. The identification had been passed along culturally.
But the sharing happens through other channels as well. Chickadee alarm calls, for instance, encode information about the type of predator, its size, and the level of urgency right into the structure of the call itself. Other species, nuthatches, titmice, vireos, eavesdrop on these signals and respond accordingly. If a chickadee watches you approach and stays quiet or calls in a way that signals calm, every other bird in earshot receives that message. Your standing in your yard isn't held by one bird alone. It's distributed across a network of creatures in constant communication with one another. The ease with which birds continue foraging when you step outside isn't just individual comfort, it is a collective assessment. They have spoken for you. Sign number 6, they've started leaving things for you. This is the finding no one saw coming. Most people are aware that crows and jays are remarkable problem solvers. They use tools, plan ahead, cache food, and remember thousands of individual hiding spots across multiple seasons. But what began surfacing in long-term observations of wild crows in suburban neighborhoods was something no one had formally predicted. Some individual crows began leaving objects at or near the feeding spots associated with specific people. The objects varied: small stones, fragments of shiny material, a scrap of bark, a button. In one documented case, widely referenced in discussions of corvid behavior, a crow regularly fed by a household began depositing small items, effectively trinkets, at the precise location where a woman of that home typically filled the feeder. Not scattered randomly, placed there. Whether this constitutes gift-giving in any sense humans would recognize, an exchange, an offering, is something researchers are still actively working through. What is not disputed is that the behavior is deliberate, directed at a specific person and reciprocal in character. The bird appears to be responding to receiving something by returning something. If you've ever found an oddly positioned object near your feeder, a pebble, a piece of glass, a small twig set apart from the others, and dismissed it as nothing, I'd encourage you to look again. You may have received a gift. Sign number 7. The alarm calls around you have shifted. You can begin testing this one tomorrow morning. Birds in your yard produce 2 broad categories of sound around humans. Alarm calls, sharp, clipped, urgent, built for warning. And contact calls, softer sounds that essentially mean, all is well, I'm here, carry on. The balance between those 2 categories in your yard, specifically while you're present, is one of the clearest windows into how you've been classified. In a yard where the human is unfamiliar or logged as a possible threat, alarm calling spikes whenever a person walks out. Short, sharp chips, the distinctive thin seat that many small birds produce, deliberately hard for predators to pinpoint, a snapping chip from a cardinal.
In a yard where the human is genuinely well known and trusted, those sounds quiet down in your presence. Birds may keep producing soft contact calls, the gentle conversational chips that songbirds use to stay connected as a group, but the urgent warning notes fade. Some birds go so far as to produce what researchers call appeasement vocalizations, sounds they use primarily with members of their own species to signal non-aggression. Whether those sounds can be meaningfully directed at humans remains an open research question, but the shift in the overall soundscape between a trusted person and an unknown one is dramatic and measurable. Pay attention to what happens acoustically when you step outside tomorrow. Are birds falling silent and pulling back? Or are they carrying on, chirping softly, moving through their morning as though your presence is simply a natural part of the world they live in? That sound is their judgment of you. Sign number 8. A bird came to you during grief. I've placed this one last because that's where it belongs. Everything we've discussed today has been about recognition, memory, behavior, the science of what birds perceive and how they process it. And that science is real, and it is genuinely profound. But for many of you watching this, the moment that's hardest to explain and hardest to let go of has nothing to do with any study. It happened when someone you loved was no longer here. Maybe it was recent. Maybe it's been years. But you know the moment. You were outside, on your porch, or standing at a window in a suddenly quiet house, and a bird arrived. A cardinal, most often, though it may have been a robin, a dove, a small wren appearing somewhere unexpected. And that arrival was different. Not alarming, not random feeling, deliberate. It stayed longer than birds usually stay. It looked at you, and you didn't think, you felt that something was being communicated. I want to be direct about this. I am not going to tell you that this is impossible. The belief that certain birds, the red cardinal especially, carry the presence or the message of someone who has passed is among the most enduring and widely held spiritual convictions in American culture. It crosses denominations, regions, and generations. It is not a fringe idea. It is part of how millions of people move through grief, locate comfort, and maintain connection with those they can no longer reach any other way. What the science can offer is this. The birds in your yard possess a capacity for awareness, recognition, memory, and intentional communication that most people have never been told about. The possibility that their behavior could be shaped by energies, presences, or forces we don't yet have instruments to detect is not something science has disproved. It is something science simply hasn't finished exploring. What the story shared by this community can offer is something simpler. When a bird came to you in that moment,
You were right to pay attention. The instinct that told you this was different was not foolish. And whatever meaning you found in it, you are far from alone.
The red cardinal carries a weight of association in American spiritual life, unlike nearly any other creature. The vivid red of the male, brilliant even on the bleakest winter day, the first burst of color at a gray feeder, has made it a symbol of life persisting past death across cultures and across centuries. The Cherokee regarded it as sacred. Christian tradition linked redbirds to blood and resurrection. The widespread modern belief that a cardinal is a loved one saying hello was not invented by anyone. It grew organically from a feeling so consistent, so common, that it eventually found its own language, because people kept having the same experience and kept reaching for the same words. If you felt it, you know what I mean. If you haven't, I hope you hold on to this. The next time a bird arrives and something inside you goes still, don't rush to explain it. Let it be what it is. Because everything we've covered today points to one thing that isn't in question. The bird knows you're there. Before I go, I have a question for you, and I genuinely want to read your answers in the comments because this community has shared some of the most affecting stories I've come across, and every single one matters. Has a bird ever come to you in a way that felt like more than chance? A moment that made you pause, that you've carried with you since? Tell me about it. What kind of bird was it? What was going on in your life at the time? And if something in this video moved you, if it brought someone to mind, please share it with them, or share it for them. Sometimes the right words at the right moment are exactly what's needed. Thank you for being here at Backyard Bird Mind. I'll see you in the next one.